And all of a sudden I feel something, and I look down, and the sheets on my bed, it's like somebody's pulling them down, like two hands. Not like your blanket's falling off, but like pulling it all the way down. And I'm looking, and I'm, no. I just start pulling it back up. I'm like, I can't acknowledge this. So I pull it back up, and this is like a big, heavy blanket. And it starts pulling down again, and I'm like, I cannot. And I just left the light on and just listened to an audiobook and just fell asleep with the lights on, which sounds very childish and very unscientific, but it's like, I'm alone in this building. I don't want to acknowledge this yet. I'm still figuring out what this wrench is. But it was like it was messing with me.
Holy mackerel, that can't be aircraft. There actually is a large unidentified object circling the Earth at incredible speed.
Naturally, we're very curious to know where it is you come from.
On Skinwalker Ranch, they have a lot of ologists, technologists, archaeologists, and today we're joined by their biologist, Ben Woodruff. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good to see you. I almost want to use the line, what's a nice biologist like you doing in a place like that?
I mean, to be fair, I am a passionate seeker of truth of all kinds, and I've worked in paleontology, archaeology, biology, and geology. I just bounce because everything overlaps, and I want to know the answers. I want to know, what are the rules of the universe? How do things actually work? How do they function, from the microscopic all the way to the astronomical? And so I just bounced around my whole life, but I've done raptor biology, my whole life as well. I've, raised birds of prey, and so that keeps dragging me back to the biological sciences. So,
yeah, and you do have, and we're going to get into all of this, man, because, like I said, this nice biologist is running across everything from mutilated cows to bones from a potentially extinct wolf, and on and on. Plus, there was some things Ben and I were going back and forth on the last few weeks. There were some things that Ben wasn't privy to talk about on the ranch that now he's got a green light to talk about. So we'll get into the weirdness of it all. But first, how do you get from a career in like raptor studies, biology, how do you get to Skinwalker Ranch?
So that happened. So when Brandon first purchased the ranch, there wasn't a show, and he had no intentions of there being a show. And he had like Tom and Candace living on the ranch, managing it, and had Eric, starting to do the work there. Brandon, from childhood, has been an enormous fan of the Hutchings Museum where I work. Okay. And he would come in and he was talking with us about it. And he's like, yeah, I purchased the ranch. You ought to come check it out. And so I started to go do biological surveys and getting specimens. And I started finding so many crazy things that nobody had, they started filming the show. And it's like, I'm finding things that I was there whenever they weren't filming. And I started finding such crazy stuff. They're like, we got to put you on the show too, because this stuff's too crazy. But nobody was looking at it. Everybody was looking at their, very specific, in-depth field that they work in. And I'm like, well, there's all these things, plants and animals and insects and microbes that it's like, these are profound. And it's right in front of you. But if you don't know what to look for, you don't see it. It's just invisible to you. So that's how I got pulled in.
Yeah. So Brandon, through the relation, Brandon loved the museum you worked at and invited you out to check it out. So what was the first indication when you went out there that there is some anomalous stuff going on? What tipped you off?
So the first two things. So when we were driving down the road to the ranch, I looked up, and just over the ranch, there were these clouds that had these weird pits. And I got pictures of it. I'll share with you. And just over the ranch. And this is a very common occurrence I've seen in subsequent years, is that just over the ranch, near what we call the triangle, there's these weird pits and cloud formations that, I was going to be a meteorologist. That was actually the direction I went. I'm like, I don't know what's forming these. It doesn't make sense with the geography. But then at the gate, at the front gate, we're waiting for Candace to come down and let us in. And I look down on the ground, and there's a dead rabbit sitting right there. I thought, okay, that's interesting. I went out and took a picture of it. No flies, no scavengers, no bloating. The art of decomposition is taphonomy, and there's no taphonomical decomposition going on internally or externally. Went back the next day, and the whole time I was there that week, nothing changed. And then finally, the day I left, when we went to the gate, it was gone. No tracks, and it was just sand all around it, and there were no tracks. So something should have messed with it. A coyote, a raccoon, the microbes inside should have started to bloat. When you die, then that gastrointestinal bacteria that is breaking down the food you eat, you're not putting new food in, so they start eating your stomach lining and off-gassing, and that's what bloating is. And it didn't happen. So it didn't stink. It was soft to the touch, and it stayed that way until it disappeared. I'm like, this is very strange, because whatever this is, it's impacting external scavengers from messing with it, but something internal is also not at work. So that blew me away right off the bat, right at the gate. I'm like, really? Right at the front gate? This is what you got? It's crazy.
Well, I'll put this out there. I've talked to a few of your colleagues that, work with technology, or Chris in archaeology, Pete with technology. Mm-hmm. And both of them described a very similar entry point into the ranch. By that, I mean first day experiences. But the first day experiences seemed to match what they could relate to based on their field, whether it's with Pete, his expensive drone on day one. And Pete was rolling his eyes when he came out there, like, this is, he thought it was all bullshit. And he got out there the first day, and he gets the drone up there, sees some kind of craft up there, and Eric's like, yeah. And then his drone dies, and he's like, this is going to be expensive when this thing crashes. But day one, and Chris touched on, and he kind of off camera told me about an experience, after he met Tom and Candace, that happened there. And then you're a biologist day one. So let me get this straight. You see a dead rabbit at the gate, and it looks like it probably is just dead because it's fresh, no bloating, no flies, nothing. But it stays that way, that same condition, the whole week?
The whole week that we were there, no ants bothered it. There's ants everywhere on the ranch, and big red fire ants. They left it alone, and no ravens, no crows, no magpies, no scavengers of any kind, no coyotes, no raccoons, nothing touched it. And when we physically touched it, it was still squishy. Rigor mortis never set in. It was still pliable. So we touched it, and it was like a fresh dead animal. It stayed that way, as though you were halting or freezing the decomposition process, but almost in a time way. Because again, if you just say, okay, we're not going to let the internal bacteria doing anything, well, there's external bacteria everywhere. And the second your immune system is not fighting it back externally, I mean, our skin would just, you see what happens on dead animals on the outside of their skin. That's external bacteria. So internally and externally, nothing. And then the day we left, as we're going to the gate, it was gone. And there were no animal tracks near it. So it just disappeared.
It was almost like welcome to the ranch.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what, and Pete talked about, again, very similar. They talked about, both Pete, the technologist, and Chris, the archaeologist, touched on how the phenomena seem to interact with different people with different specialties in a different way. And they said, what you're seeing on the show is like 1/10, if even that, of everybody's got a story. And there's a lot of people that come and go from there, and most everyone has a story. So now what year was that happened when you came on initially?
My brain says like 2016, maybe. It was whenever Brandon first purchased the ranch. It was that same year, and it was before the TV show had started. So I think it was. My brain says 2016, because when did the New York Times UAP article came out? It was before that.
Yeah, that was the New York Times article came out in 2017.
Okay, so I think it was 2016. I think it was the fall of 2016.
So, yeah, see, in my mind, I'm thinking of you, with the recent seasons on TV, right? Like, but
I've got stuff going back years and years and years before, and most of the stuff I've documented isn't on the show, and it drove me crazy. Not because I don't care if I'm on the show. I want answers firsthand that I can get myself. I don't want an anecdotal answer. I want firsthand answers. And so I'm like, this is stuff that other scientists need to know this stuff. So they're more brilliant than me. Let them percolate in their head, and it's not getting out. So finally, I think last fall, I said, hey, Brandon, I'm doing a presentation. I made a big, long list. I'm like, these things have not been in the show. I don't know if you guys are going to put it in. Can I please talk about these things publicly? And all but 3 of them, he said yes. So I'm like, yes, get the information out.
That's awesome. And I know you'd mentioned that when I approached you about this. You said it's good timing because there's you're able to talk about it. So, well, that changes things, doesn't it? Like we've got 10 years of stuff. This will be a 4-hour podcast. Okay. 2016 then, in my mind, is when your entry point is to Skinwalker Ranch, and you have the rabbit at the gate incident. So let's just kind of walk down the trail till 2026. So what's next?
So that same first week, we went over to Homestead 2, which is where, even from the Bigelow era, tons of stuff happens there. Tons of stuff has happened to me there that weekend since. But there's that kind of, I don't know if it's like a well or something, and you can open it up, and there's been radioactive elements going on, and sometimes it's flatline. Right next to that, 5 feet away from that well, there was a dead skunk. And it looked like a taxidermy specimen. It looked cute. It was that little face in there. And we poked it with a stick. It was still soft and pliable. And we thought, okay, well, that's strange. I didn't think anything of it. The next time I went out, like 3 weeks later, it was still there, untouched. I'm like, okay, well, you should have microbes breaking this down. It was there for 3 years. 3 years. No decomposition whatsoever. And I kept bringing up, I'm like, Eric, we ought to at least film a little blurb about this for our own records. So him and I filmed a little blurb, here's a skunk. Look, we're going to actually now contaminate the evidence. We're going to flip it over, look at it. It's like, it's still intact, still normal 3 years later. And then the very next day we went out, and it's like, come on, this is ridiculous. It was gone, and in its place was the hand and wrist of a perfectly decomposed, another animal, like something prairie dog sized, as if to say, you think I can't decompose? Here you go. And a tuft of that fur was wedged under a little split piece of wood on the ranch house there. And it was almost like it was messing with us. And nobody else had been on the ranch. It was me and a couple other people staying. So nobody had gone over there in the middle of the night. And how would they know to do that? So there's 3 years the thing didn't decompose. And then when we document it, gone. That's impossible. That's stupid. That sounds crazy. But sharing it, we did film it. But if somebody doesn't believe it, that's fine. I am just reporting back what happened. Take it as you will. But this is what happened.
Pete touched on a little bit about his white whale theory.
Yeah.
The ranch was, with GPS being, it's all dependent upon time and time sinking. And somehow the ranch has the ability in areas to manipulate time. Mm-hmm. And everything you've said right now is almost like with these specimens you're finding, that somehow just around them, time kind of stands still until you make a decision to where you leave or you film it. And then it says, okay, now I'll show you that you're not completely nuts. And it does something like that. So that was that the same year, or was that like the next year?
Yeah.
That happened?
So when it disappeared on us and had the stuff left over, that was 3 years later.
Okay.
So a lot of other stuff happened, before that. But finally, I'm like, it's still there. It's still there. Every time I check, it's still there. Nothing's moving it. Nothing's decomposing it. And this is under a bunch of deciduous trees. And every year those trees fall, the leaves begin to rot, and then again those microbes break things down, they make things moist, and there's no reason this thing should not have been breaking down. Even with plant-based microbes, forget regular mammalian decomposers. I mean, there's just the normal stuff on the ground, where dead leaves turn to soil. It's what should have happened to this thing, and it didn't for 3 years.
I think we could almost break it down like this. Like, let's talk about, because you're a biologist and the phenomenon is presenting to you anomalous biological evidence. And then I know personally you've had some more of the Skinwalker paranormal experiences. So let's pivot. Let's talk about your paranormal experiences, and then we can jump back in on the biological ones that stand out to you. And of course, we don't all know, but you should know if you're watching this, about the wolf, potential dire wolf, the cattle mutilations, or the UFO above the cow and the cow dies, those type of things. I didn't realize you were with the cow and everything, that you were also working with the show at the time. So
yeah,
let's take us down the paranormal path, and then we'll flip back to the biological path.
Okay. I think probably the first thing, my first night on the ranch, Eric was going on and off the ranch at the time, and then later on he was living there for years, full time. And so there used to be a spare room, and a bunch of people were staying with my group were staying in Tom and Candace's place, and I was sleeping over in the spare room in the command center. And I had the lights on, and I'm like, this is weird. I've known about this place, since I was young. I heard the stories. I remember it being in the news in the 90s. And now I'm here on the ranch. I'm like, okay, this is kind of strange. And I have the lights on. I'm in the bedroom. And it sounds hokey, but this is what happened. So I'm sitting there, lights on. There's no internet access, at least not then, on the ranch in any kind. So I'm just like looking through photos I've taken of the day, looking at photos of the skunk and of the rabbit. And all of a sudden I feel something, and I look down, and the sheets on my bed, it's like somebody's pulling them down, like two hands. Not like your blanket's falling off, but like pulling it all the way down. And I'm looking, and I'm no. I just start pulling it back up. I'm like, I can't acknowledge this. So I pull it back up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put on an audiobook, start listening here. And I look down, and it starts happening again. And these are like crummy sheets. It's not like these are slicky, silky sheets or anything. This is like a big, heavy blanket. And it starts pulling down again. And I'm like, I cannot acknowledge this. So I just pulled it all up and wrapped it like in between my legs. So it was 100% on the bed and wrapped in my leg. So it's like you're pulling me off if you're pulling them off. And I just left the light on and just listened to an audiobook and just fell asleep with the lights on, which sounds very childish and very unscientific, but it's like, I'm alone in this building. I don't want to acknowledge this yet. I'm still figuring out what this ranch is. But it was like it was messing with me.
Well, I would have ran like a little bitch. So you don't sound childish at all. That blanket comes down 4 inches. I'm out. And I'm like, Eric, can I sleep with you? I promise you that.
Yeah.
Dude, that's wild. So did you, so what do you talk about the next day over breakfast? Like when that happens?
Well, I told them about it, and I wrote it down in my journal, and it's like, hey, this is, worth. But see, in the early days, this again, before the show, there was sort of this sense of, what am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do? Yeah. It's a privilege to be on the ranch. Now I'm constantly taking photos and videos, every angle, everything, 3D stuff. But back then it was like, am I allowed to talk about this? Am I allowed to document any of this stuff, or or even share it? Is this taboo? I didn't, it wasn't really well spelled out. I was invited as a guest to come and, there was one time where we were, when they started to have cameras that people could do online a few years later, and one of our team, we pull up, and Caleb and Bryant were there, and they had guns out, and we're out there, and we're catching butterflies. We were doing a biological survey through the grass, just running with nets. And people online were like, oh, something big's going on. They're getting out the guns, and, oh, what are they doing? Oh. And they're freaking out like it was some epic experiment. It's like, we're just doing a biological survey, So there's normal stuff that happens too. We got all those samples here at the museum still. But just the dead stuff. I hate saying it, but the ranch behaves as though it has a consciousness, awareness. Now, we have to use that because if you go into genetics, we say things like, well, genes want this, or a genetic motivation is this. And as far as we know, genes are completely unaware. But they operate as if they are aware and have desires and motivations. And so we use that verbiage, and that's how the ranch is. Maybe the ranch really does. It sure seems to be aware and conscious. Maybe it's not, and it just operates in a way that makes sense. I don't know, but it sure seems to be very aware and be one step ahead of anything you ever try to do.
Man, it's wild. So what else have you not talked about that maybe is on the paranormal side of things that you've experienced?
There's one I'll share. There's one that I hesitate to share. Maybe I'll share that one. Maybe that one's okay.
Sure.
And again, I'm not asking anybody to believe. This is just
sure.
And see, I'm kind of sensitive about this. So 2 years ago, I had cardiac arrest. I died for 9 minutes.
Oh.
And literally, and so much so that I was so dead that I had 3 post-mortem strokes. Your blood starts to clot when you die. And they brought me back, and that's a whole separate story. That coming back from that and having to reframe reality, and this story I'm going to share happened before that happened. Okay. But now after the fact, like, I'm really kind of sensitive about talking about things that have to do with reality and warping reality. I realize that your mind can be warped, even just by your own biology. I mean, when I was in the hospital, I would just be looking at things and it just looked like a bunch of weird random pixels. And then when my brain would register what it was, okay, you see it's a computer or a TV screen or it's a device, but it was just in front of your face, totally invisible. So this one night on the ranch, and I don't share this one much. And again, if you think I'm crazy, I don't care. Maybe I am, but this is what happened. So Tom and Candace said, hey, we just read that at this elevation, we might have fireflies. And I said, oh, that's cool. I've never seen fireflies. Have you ever seen them? No. Okay, well, I'm going to go out and see if I can see them. So I went out by the helicopter pad. I'm looking around like a dumb little kid. And what am I looking for? Fireflies. And I get right up by the fence. And so I'm maybe of the fence for the helicopter pad. So it's like big bars. And I'm about 2 feet away from the fence. And all of a sudden, about 2 feet on the other side, I have the visual memory of 2 figures about my height. And it was like if you were standing next to somebody in a ghillie suit and suddenly realized it's a person, you were like, ah, right? I had that reaction. I was like, ah, there's people there. And I started to back away. And as soon as I did that, I look over. Why would I look away? I look away and I see this blue, about the size of a marble, glowing blue light come out of the grass in the helicopter pad area where I am. And it starts moving towards me like Tron. These are very left angular movements moving towards me. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying to get my phone out and trying to take a picture. And then it starts to go back in the exact same path that it did. And it disappears. And I was like, oh, that's strange. I'm going to go inside and see if they got it on the cameras. Well, after the fact, my visual memory of those people is like a translucent cardboard cutout. And so what I think, I've talked with Eric about this for hours, and what I think is that I did see something and that they're like, well, you're not supposed to be seeing this, and that my mind was interrupted, kind of like a quick scan, and we're going to dangle keys in front of this. Come here, little kid, you wanted to see a firefly? We're going to give you a super quick rendition. Fireflies aren't blue. They're not round. They don't go in angular patterns, but it's like, quick, look over here, idiot. And then I went inside. Why wouldn't I stay over there and look? It's a really weird experience. And again, the people there, some of the people saw me on some of the security cameras that weren't filming, and they saw me like backing away. But other than that, I don't have proof that it happened. But it was one of those things where at the time I was more focused on the blue glowy thing. But now I think the blue glowy thing wasn't even there, and that those people or beings or whatever they were there. and that they interrupted and redirected. So you have visual information come in, it gets interrupted before the brain translates it. That's what I think happened, but that was weird.
No, we had a guy on the show last year that has a theory about a sphere network, right? Mm-hmm. And it's Patrick Jackson, and he talks with paranormal things in houses and outside, that the sphere network, which on the ranch, we talked about the ranch when he was on, like you see these formations and I don't know, it is what it is. His theory is his theory, but this ability of them to distract people either to or away from where they want your attention to either be focused on or diverted from, and in touch with maybe whatever your reference point is at the time. In your case, if it's fireflies, like we'll create that'll get his attention. In other people, if they're in what they call a haunted house, we'll have maybe a noise or an associated haunting type behavior, and we'll lead them downstairs because they're heading upstairs and we don't want them to go up there. Yeah. And on and on. So that's just kind of what came to mind when you said the diversion of, I see these beings, now I'm being distracted, now they're all gone. What,
well, I had another one too at Homestead 3 that's worth sharing, and this is my first day actually. Well, and so I'll share kind of another fun thing too. So when we came onto the ranch, the dog who lives there, William, he had been attacked, and Tom and Candace, they were still getting to know me, but they were kind of a little sketchy about it, like not wanting to talk about what had attacked it. And I'm like, was it like a dog? Was it a coyote? What was it? And they're like, got attacked. And their house was beautiful. They had decorated it. Was all hippy dippy, beautiful, retro, awesome. And when the sun set, they had all these prisms in the window, and they said, "Oh, look, it's rainbow o'clock," But they had guns by all the doors, and it's like, well, why do you have guns by the door? And they're like, because this thing came in and we had to kind of shoot it back, and kind of were not telling me too much about it. But one of the local medicine men came while we were there, and William, the dog, had a cone on his head, and the medicine man did a blessing on him, and because he had stitches and stuff. So then all of us right after that went all the way to Homestead 2 and then Homestead 3. And we're sitting there, and the medicine man, Tom and Candace, a couple of people are over there by the homestead talking. And I was maybe, 20, 30 feet away, and I was looking out, and I started to hear voices. They were native. They kind of sounded like Utah Aztec Ute, local tribe. And I speak some Cherokee, which is not a Utah tribe in any way, shape, or form. But I was hearing this, and I'm like, okay, So I started speaking Cherokee back. And all of a sudden, those voices, they went quiet, and they started talking to each other, oh, is he hearing us? Where's that voice coming from? Like, they couldn't see me. And so I'm just staring. And Candace is like, Ben. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, we're so worried about you. And I'm like, well, why? And apparently the week before, somebody had been standing in that exact spot and had been looking out that direction and had zoned out and went catatonic and had passed out, and they had to take him off the ranch to the hospital, make sure he was okay. So that's not what happened to me, but it was the same spot. So that was unusual. That was strange. And I don't know what to make of that. But you'll hear voices on the ranch. You'll hear whispers. You'll hear talkings, and you'll see these corner. It's almost like those seeing eye. Remember those, like in the 90s? Those things where you may make your eyes see over and then it pops out. Those 3D things.
Yeah, 3D, like 3D glasses on watching a 3D movie.
Kind of like that, yeah. So you'll be looking at something, and then it's like you'll see something from the peripheral vision, which is in the black and white spectrum over here, and then you look and you're not seeing it. You talk to anybody who's been on the ranch, and they've seen things walking or moving. Everybody's seen it. It's one of those nonchalant things. That and seeing UFOs is nonchalant. It's like not even a big deal anymore. People are like, look, there's one up there. Those things are not a big deal to people anymore. They've gotten used to it. It happens so frequently.
Yeah, everybody's just hoping to see something once.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So you mentioned there's one other thing at one of the homesteads. I think you were going to bring up.
Well, that was the one. Was the first one I brought up was the one where over by the helicopter pad. That was
okay.
That was the biggie. And I don't like sharing that one much because that's the one that I have the least amount of corroborative evidence of anybody else.
Yeah.
Other than the people who saw me on camera and the people who saw my reaction when I came in and explained it. But now it seems strange, but that's something that happened. So,
and what I try to put in perspective is the fact that after talking to a number of you guys, is that there's a year-round effort at the ranch. There's a lot of collaboration, and when it's time to film, and whether you have a crew of the drillers, you have the camera crew, you have your own crew, that what we see is an hour show. What you see is like us, minute by minute, day by day, hour by hour, week by week. And when you say stuff like that, I would love to be a fly on the wall, like on, lunch break. Like, yeah, I saw what's your count today? I saw 2 shadow beings and I did see a craft today. What did you see? Well, I lifted up the well and I got burnt by radiation. It must change. Like when you work with people, that's not a 9-to-5 job. Like that's the water cooler talk must just be mind blowing. And also does it really galvanize the relationships you have with people that you work with out there? Because you guys get to experience something that just nobody else gets to experience. I mean, has it changed your relationships and has it, I guess, deepened with the people you work with?
So it's kind of different with the crew versus anybody who's doing experimentation. So the film crew, they're actually incredible people. And with film crews of any kind, usually there's some people where there's some drama. Not this. Like all the people are tight. They're good. They've worked on, Oak Island and different places. They're good people. They're cool. But most of them are not comfortable with it. They're like, we're having to work here, come here every day, occasionally be here at night. They're not comfortable with the reality of it. So they just kind of like to shoot the bull about it and joke around. And if something really crazy happens, they just look at each other and it's like, hey, they're not denying it, but it's kind of uncomfortable. Those of us who are there doing experiments, like, we're angry. We're like, we want to know what on earth is going on. This is challenging our areas of expertise. Where the film crew, they're documenting. Where we're experimenting. So it's different fields. So, but yeah, we talk about things, and there'll be a few people on the film crew where they'll pull you aside and be like, hey, that was really where, and they'll talk to you one-on-one. But the camaraderie they have as a film crew is like, we've got work to do. We got to function filming you guys doing your thing. So we've got to just be in the headspace of, we're working. They don't have time to, but yeah, at night, or just sitting around talking. Yeah, at lunch, we've had some deep conversations, and the people there doing the experiments, yes, we have the absolute deepest and most profound of conversations, and spiritual conversations and scientific conversations, and it has brought us very close together.
Nice. Well, let's do this. Let's make a pivot. We'll pivot to the kind of meat and potatoes of the biological anomalies that we have seen on the show, but they're pretty dramatic. And so I'll let you start where you want to start with those. I'll share one that I haven't shared anywhere else that I can remember, and they're never going to put it on the show. I know they won't. One of the ones I found was there's a plant called a desert trumpet plant. It grows in a mathematically perfect way. And I've even written out the formula for its growth patterns. Like if you were a computer coder, you could put it in and generate. And we found this one part of the ranch over the east field, then it would grow. And then once it hits this level, I don't know if it's radiation can mutate DNA, but that third growth would just like this nasty, gnarly spiral that went everywhere. And all of them in the east field were that way. Next year,
they weren't. So that may be nothing. We don't know what did it, but that's something worth mentioning because we never talk about the plants. The cow, that one, they said, hey, we had a cow die, and then come to find out, no, you had a UFO appear over the cow, and then the cow buckled and died. That's pretty bold, and I don't know why we're not talking about that more. I mean, in the daytime, on camera, a UFO appears over the cow, and the cow buckles and dies. And then they went and checked it out, and it did have some, radiation, and then it didn't later on in the day. But they had me come, I don't know, a few weeks, a month later, and it had decomposed, which I got to pause. One of the things that I found, I want to know what the rules of the ranch are. We don't know. But one thing seems to be, if you're coyote to small deer sized or smaller, you don't decompose normal. If you're bigger than that, you follow the rules more so, like a cow, an elk, then they will. So that cow started to decompose, and they're like, hey, Ben, come give it a check out, give it a look over. And when I came, that's when I found the tooth mark through the rib that matched either a dire wolf or a jaguar, which they didn't mention. We filmed it, but they're like, let's focus on the dire wolf part. But what they didn't show is that the tendons had contorted the entire skeleton in what we call in paleontology the dinosaur death pose. So mammals, when we die, we go into the fetal position. Our tendons pull us in, including a cow. But dinosaurs, they would spiral backwards. That's what this thing did. And I'll send you pictures over it. Like went, and we filmed that, but they didn't put it in the episode. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. This is not normal decomposition. This is not normal taphonomy. This is breaking the rules. What would do this? I don't even have a theory, but it breaks all the rules of decomposition on large mammals. So I'll send you pictures over. It's nutty. It looks tortured.
And to the untrained eye, which unless you're a biologist, we all are untrained in that area. We might not think anything of that. It's a dead cow, right? And clearly not know what to look for. But I do remember the tooth mark through the rib, right? And I think, and again, all I remember is that it was, dire wolf was the only thing they wanted to talk about. But you're saying that it also could potentially match a jaguar, which clearly Utah doesn't have jaguars, right?
Yeah, or it shouldn't, but now we've documented one on, so we can get to that in a bit. Okay. But so I measured the tooth size, and then I had a wolf tooth, I had a bunch of coyote teeth, I had a black bear tooth, and I took the next rib over. So here's the rib that has the bite. I took the next rib over as well. And I've got them both, and I took a drill press. I didn't turn it on. I just used it to to test how much pressure to go through, and every tooth would shatter going through it. I didn't have a jaguar tooth and I didn't have a dire wolf tooth, but every tooth would not bite through it. So that's carnivores. Usually they eat something whole, but if you're getting to bone, you break off pieces and swallow it so you can get the calcium and the marrow out of it. You don't just bite through a bone. You don't puncture through it. You use these side teeth. You don't use the front teeth. And that was a canine tooth poking all the way through. So I said, hey, it fits size-wise. It doesn't mean that's what it is, but it fits either a dire wolf or a jaguar. And they weren't excited about the jaguar part. And it's like, well, we had jaguars here during the Ice Age. That's worth noting because there are claims that Ice Age animals appear on the ranch and like dinosaur type things. When I first got on the ranch, they said, oh yeah, and we don't like talking about it, but there's reports of a dino beaver, like this beaver that was just like massive. And I'm like, and the next time I came out, I brought this and I'm like, yeah, those are real. This is Castoroides. This is like a 250, 300 pound beaver from the Ice Age. It's a recent extinction. It's something that would have lived on the ranch, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 years ago. Obviously they should be extinct. Nobody's seen one. But if you had a portal opening up, could you have something like that going through? People during the Shermans, the Bigelow era saw something like that. That's what they would describe it as, a dino beaver. big old huge nasty teeth. I mean, you got to be open to things. And if you find something that shouldn't be there, is it there because it's coming through a portal, or is it just like the coelacanth fish? We thought it was extinct. Turns out it's not in this one region. So we have to open up that.
Right. And then it also, when you're saying that, it kind of harkens back to what Pete Kelsey and I were talking about, the time. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, Travis in the portal, right? Like if you're watching the show and you see him diagramming and the testing and even the imagery that's being created, looks like a portal. And then you talk about Pete talking about the anomalous GPS and other technology that is picking up this anomalous behavior. And he kind of lends him to believe that time maybe can behave different in areas at the ranch. And you put time, manipulation, and portal together, and maybe you get dino beaver and dire wolf. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and when I found on the ranch, all the scientists are starting to use religious terms. All the religious folk are starting to use scientific terms because none of us have the vocabulary. So we're using this kind of fits it. Portal. We all picture Rick and Morty, right? Portal opens up, you go through to another side. That is a visual that we understand, but just because we view it that way doesn't mean that how it works. You could have portals that cross over in all different directions and materialize in different ways, and we just picture a circle opens up and something comes through. And apparently they filmed one during the Bigelow era. I haven't seen, I don't know anybody we've had witnesses who shared that, but I don't think that footage is public anywhere, that a portal opened up this way and something came through and went out on the ranch. I have seen what could be called a portal, and I've got a witness too. Charlie Larson and I were on the ranch, and we went out to do some astrophotography. And so we're between the Homestead 1 and Homestead 2. And we put our cameras up, we're taking pictures, and I said, Charlie, sometimes this ranch seems spooky and scary, and sometimes it just feels totally normal, like there's just, like a normal ranch. And he's like, yeah, like right now, it just seems totally normal. And then as soon as we both said that, we heard a sound. It's like a cross between shooting a .22 bullet across the desert, that and maybe the sound of if you're on a frozen lake and it's breaking, that boom, 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 boom. That was a combination of those sounds. And we look over, and about 8 feet high, about 20, 30 feet away, we see an expansion ring coming out. And it was not generating light, but the front edge of it was pushing so fast that it was compressing the water vapor. So you had like a white ring coming out. And you could see, and then in the center it was a little wobbly, a little like a shimmer, like kind of like on water, as it was coming out. And we're like, and we didn't see it open, but we heard the sound. We both looked over, and it was already maybe 10 feet open, and went out. And we're like, let's get back. So we're heading back, and the ranch house and the command center right next to each other. The command center went, the power went off. And then came back on, and Tom came out, and he's like, you guys okay? We're like, yeah. Did your power just go out? He's like, no. I'm like, well, it did at the command center. And he said, that can't be the case. They're on the same breaker. If one goes off, they both go off. I'm like, well, we just saw the one go off. So, so I don't know if that was a portal. I don't even know what a portal really is, but it looked like kind of a white and clear version of Rick and Morty horizontally. Strange.
So how far away, like when you're standing there and you make the comment, approximately how far away did this ring open up in front of you guys?
How far to it?
Yeah, like how far were you from it when it opened up?
30 feet.
So it was right there.
So we're about 30, pretty close, and we hear it. We both look over, and when we looked over, it's 8 to 10 feet open already, and expanding outward horizontally, just above head height. Like I could have touched the top of it height wise, where it was coming out. I'm 6 something, and I could have touched the top of it. So it was expanding out just above our heads, but at our angle, it's like this is coming towards us, opening outward.
And so you just beat feet out of there when you saw it coming towards you.
Yeah. Well, at first we were just kind of like, are we both? I think we're in shock for maybe 10 seconds, and then I'm like, let's go back. He's like, yeah, let's go back. And we had our camera gear and our tripod, so we're kind of like, like looking away, and it dissipated out. It wasn't. And again, this was not self-illuminating.
Yeah.
There were stars, and those stars were lighting up. It's like if you see videos when they have like those smart bombs that they like throw in a cave, and you'll see this white ring come out first, and then you see the fire and stuff come out after. It was like that. The extreme compression of energy was compressing water vapor. So we saw a water vapor ring coming out, kind of like it didn't look like a cloud, but technically a cloud is compressed water vapor, right? Yeah. So dipping out. And then it started dissipating. When we were getting our stuff and we looked up, it was gone.
And so this was at nighttime?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man. It reminds me of when didn't they do an experiment in the Mesa where they put where the water disappeared?
Yeah, and water and smoke.
And smoke, yeah, the smoke
sucking down in, going nowhere. Where is that going?
Yeah, like these pockets of whatever this is. Like you said, is it a portal? I'm not even sure how to define it, but these areas that can open up or draw things in or pull things out. And so,
well, and on that, if you go on Google Earth, and you can't get the best views, but backtrack, and you can see this on the show too. If you watch, anytime you see the Mesa is sinking in on that spot right where they're checking stuff out, right near the triangle. It is sinking in on itself. It's pulling in.
Okay, so let me ask you this: the imagery, I think, Chris. It brings it to attention on the show last season, and then Chris, the archaeologist, was talking about it. But there's those it's almost not Google Earth, but aerial images over the years, and it looks like it's been photoshopped in the year that he found the coin, right? The same year, I think in '64, that if there was some massive excavation or they buried something there, that the coin was from that year, and there's a manipulation in the photos. But you're saying if you go on Google Earth now and backtrack it some years, that the Mesa is starting to come in on itself?
Yeah. And if you just watch the show, anytime you look over that section of the Mesa near where they're doing the drilling, look there. It's a little to the west of where they're doing the drilling. But look, and you'll see, and it's like, oh my gosh, somebody pointed it out to me like my third year in, and I went back and looked at a photo from my first year. I'm like, oh geez, that's like 20 feet sunk in, the whole heading towards where they say something's buried in the Mesa.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering, because that's what came to mind is like, okay, if there's something buried in that Mesa and it's trying to retract because you're getting closer to it or drilling to it, and it's almost got that. I mean, look, there's ceramic that can disintegrate and regenerate. There's metals that can't be defined. There's, a coin that, as Chris put it, it's like doing a biopsy and this massive, 100,000 pounds of rock. You shouldn't pull a coin out. But it presents to him as an archaeologist these things, and to you as a biologist, you've been presented these things. When did let's talk about the skull, the skeleton, and the potential dire wolf, because I'll ask you this before you start that. The fragment that you have of that skull, that's not a panther though, right? Or a jaguar?
That's not a what?
That's not a jaguar.
No, that thing's its own thing. So, and I'll tell you after go on about not after this, but after I talk about the dire wolf, remind me, and we can talk about jaguar evidence on the ranch and video footage that I said to Brandon, I'm like, footage, like, should we put this, you guys want to put this in the show? You want to put this out there? And took forever to hear back, and he's like, okay, this is good information. I'm like, well, can I share this? Because some of this information is public. And he's like, yeah, you're allowed to. I'm like, okay, Caleb brought some of that to our attention. But okay, the wolf thing. So they were doing experiments I wasn't there that day, and they were doing experiments that had nothing to do with biology. They had a couple kayaks and they were walking through Dry Creek, which isn't dry, and it's 1,000,000 degrees. If you're going waders in that thing, it is a slog, and they were filming it. They have all these instruments up on these kayaks, and they were going along, and they found some dead canine, and it stunk so bad. They said it was wretched, which put in our rules. We seem to have the rules. Big animals don't decompose, small animals do. Well, this was in the water, so there's a new rule set. Animals, it was a small animal, but big or small, we don't know, but small animals in the water do follow decomposition rules, apparently. So that is a little thing to put in for any of you scientists watching out there. Think it through and add that into your bit of understanding. So it was so bad, but they're like, well, it's probably some dog or something. It stinks so bad. We'd love to take it back, but let's just hack the jaw off and let's give it to Ben. He can take a look at it. And they sent me the video at the end of the day, and they're like, yeah, we found this. I'm like, oh, you got to go back and get it. You got to go back and get the rest of it. And so they went back, but I think it might have been a few weeks before they were able to get back out there. And the rest of the skull had washed away. They got as much of the skeleton as they could for me, which isn't much. It's ribs and part of the pelvis and a few leg bones. And they put it all in like quadruple bag and froze it and gave me this frozen block. And they're like, this reeks so bad. You take it home. You deal with it. But the jaw, when I cleaned it off, and I said, this thing, morphological number of teeth and the size and the shape and the robust prominent part of this where is different species than a gray wolf, seems to look like a subadult dire wolf. I'm not saying it is, but it doesn't look like a gray wolf. It doesn't look like a dog. I think this is worth checking into. And so they said, okay, well, let's why don't you clean it and prep it, which I did. And
yeah, we're having this happened with Caleb too. We're having little skinwalker interruptions here, but you had just gotten the remains back, and we're doing your analysis on the jawbone of the wolf.
Yeah. So I have dermestid beetles that I keep, colony of dermestid beetles, to properly prepare a specimen. So you scrape off or clean off or tear off any flesh that's still there with gloves. And then you let it dry out, air dry, and then you let dermestid beetles eat it clean. They do an amazing job. It looks really clean and really nice. So I did that, and I had this jaw. And I took it back to the ranch, and I had it in a little Tupperware thing, like a little bin about this deep, and no lid, just a couple paper towels in the bottom. And I brought it, and I was showing some of the crew. And then they said, well, hey, we're having lunch. Why don't you come on in? But leave that outside. So I left it on a table. When you walk the steps to get up to the trailer, the table was there, right next to all of us. In there maybe 12 minutes, I eat, and I came back out, and the jaw has lacerations cut into it all around it. It was exactly where I left it. The jaw itself was in the same position, but it had these lacerations all through the bone itself. Now, some people have said, well, maybe it was a rodent. Okay, if it was, then why isn't it all flipped over in a different position? But if it was teeth marks, rodents have double teeth, so you'd have these two, and it's not that way. They're just slashed all the way around it. I'm like, well, that's kind of ominous. What in 12 minutes out here, while people were going in and out past it. And it has all these lacerations. But we said, well, hey, let's do a test on the teeth. We probably have some good DNA in the teeth. And so I took the biggest tooth out, and I gave it to somebody, and then it disappeared. I think somebody was like, cool, the dire wolf of Skinwalker Ranch, I'm going to run off with this. So I took the next biggest tooth. We sent it to Colossal Bioscience, and they're the ones who recently made dire wolves and are trying to bring woolly mammoths back and dodos and all that. Yeah. So I sent it to them, and they did the test, and they are the premier genetics lab right now worldwide. And they need a lot of donors donating money to help fund these things they're doing, kind of like Jurassic Park, right? It takes a lot of money to do that kind of stuff. So factor that in. So the results come back, and they send this pie chart. And basically, it was like 89.9%. So basically, 90% of it we'll address in a second. 10% of it was wolf, gray wolf, specifically Eurasian gray wolf and Greenland gray wolf. Neither one of those are here. That alone, that should be a news story. Greenland gray wolf in Utah. Eurasian gray wolf, that's even more rare, in Utah. That alone is a huge story. And because it's trumped by the direwolf thing, nobody talks about that. I want answers to that. These are two species very far apart. And why is DNA from both of them in this? But the other 90%, they said as mystery wolf. Now, they've got everything documented. They've got every fox, every dog breed, direwolves. They've got everything sequenced. And even like crazy things like the Papuan singing dog. I have no idea how they got DNA from that. I mean, those things are like super rare and in the middle of nowhere. And it didn't match any of those. So the other 90% of this animal is a wolf creature that doesn't exist anywhere in the known modern day. And so they said, and I think they did this to try to save face. They said, well, we can, whatever this was, it bred with a gray wolf. So we think we can safely couch this in as being a wolf. It's like, what 90% of it, you don't know what it is. Only 10% of it is gray wolf. 90%, they put it on the table as mystery wolf. And Eric and I were like, well, let's call it a crypto wolf. That'd be cooler. So we don't know what it is. It is a wolf. It is a canine of some kind. Morphologically, it has the shape and the tooth number to match a dire wolf. They say it's not an actual dire wolf, but they also say they don't know what it is. 90% of it is something that doesn't exist anywhere on Earth. So that is actually more interesting than a dire wolf. If you had a dire wolf come through a portal, or if dire wolf still existed out there and it's a new discovery of something we thought was extinct, this is more interesting. Saying this is a new wolf creature that we don't know of, that's insane. That's big. But again, the Eurasian gray wolf and the Greenland gray wolf, that should be big news already. Just that alone. Doesn't make sense.
It's completely anomalous.
Mm-hmm.
And and what bothers me, or it's starting to bother me more as I talk to more of people that are specialists like you at the ranch, is their findings. And these aren't findings with Walmart grade experiments. These are findings. It's not like I used to do some paranormal stuff with guys. We did some Amazon movies. We didn't have great equipment, right?
Yeah.
You're ordering this stuff online. So take it for what it's worth. But the equipment and the expertise and the labs you're using to test stuff is, just the equipment they bring out for a day's shoot is worth more than, a neighborhood's net worth in a day. And so it's not like you think the scientific community, or in your case, the biological science community, would take notice. So, and I wanted to ask you that. Do you get inquiries from peers about your findings?
I do. The nice thing, I think I have kind of some immunity that a lot of the other experts on the ranch don't, because I bounce from field to field to field, because I have ADHD. I want to know. I want to work over here. Well, I'm going to be passionate about this, and I'm going to learn everything I can and work in this field. And so I don't care about my reputation. You want to besmirch me or say, you're foolish to say such a thing? Fine. I don't care. I want truth. I want to know the real answers. How does this universe work? What's really going on the ranch? I want to know. I don't care about my reputation. I don't care about that. I mean, and I'm a good person. I don't mean like I don't care about my reputation. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't care about it in academia. I couldn't care less. I want to know truth. That's what matters most to me. So I do get a lot of people, and people bring up incredible ideas for experiments, and they'll challenge some of my thoughts. I don't come up with like a set hypothesis, but I want to know what the rules are. And I'll put out there, here's kind of what it looks like. And somebody will say, well, you're not thinking about this. What about this, this, this? I'm like, that is a very good point I hadn't thought about. Okay, I'm going to recalibrate my understanding. Being wrong is good in science, because then that means you get to come back in and you're just going to fine tune until you're right, until you find out what truth is. It doesn't matter who is right. It matters what is right. And so a lot of people do reach out and share some incredible ideas. A lot of times we'll have done the experiments they suggest, and I'm like, it's just not on the show, but we've done it. It just didn't make for good TV.
Sure.
So,
no, I get, and that's a challenge. I understand that. I understand that. So from the biology standpoint, you had the bunny at the gate as the entry point, skunk, the cow, the findings of the
birds.
The birds. That's what I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the birds.
So a lot of the birds, we had tons of birds. A lot of them we didn't film about because they were birds of prey. All native birds in the United States are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. A bird of prey has no extra protection. It's a common misconception. Now, bald and golden eagles have an additional set, but other than that, like a robin feather is as protected as a red-tailed hawk feather. But people don't know that publicly. So we thought, is some jerk online gonna, some officer somewhere gonna be like, well, you're holding a screech owl and examining it, then technically it's in your possession. So we're gonna write you up a citation. I mean, that's no different for any other native bird. So there's a lot of birds of prey that have died on the ranch and had strange things about them. Again, not rotting, not decomposing. They stay floppy. We've documented it privately, but we didn't put it out there publicly. We had, I got a picture. I had to do an illustration because I got tired of trying to explain this to people because it's really kind of tricky to explain. So there's a bird called an oriole. They brought it, and I'm like, I pick it up, and it's floppy. But the legs, so there's skin and scales around the legs, the feet, they're completely intact, little dinosaur feet. And I'm like feeling it. I'm like, well, this is really weird. So I took a scalpel, cut open, and you would just have gaps with no bone or tendon. So here's my illustration. So on this, the blue is the gaps in between where there's just empty space, and the black is where there's tissue. Now, that's not perfect to scale, but it's to try to give you the idea.
Sure.
So there's just literally, tendon and bone, nothing. Tendon and bone, nothing. That is impossible to just have it disappear. There is literally nothing that could do that. The legs were intact. I had to cut it open. There is nothing at all that can do that. Your tendons run in certain ways. Things are intertwined. So it's like something magically from the inside went doop, 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 and just had gaps. I hope the thing wasn't alive when it happened because I cannot imagine how much agony that would have caused. Another one they had was they brought me a starling, and this thing was squishy, and it stayed squishy. And we tested it on the ranch, squishy, squishy, squishy. We brought it off the ranch. We filmed it at the museum like weeks later, a month later, it was still squishy. But the head looked like it had exploded from the inside out. Eric pointed out, we looked at it under microscopes, and he pointed out that, it looks like there was some sort of energetic expansion outward. Don't know what that would mean. So taking it off the ranch, the skull eventually did start to decompose. It started to smell. And I'll send you a picture of this too. I think I was going to send you some files, and I don't think I sent you this one. But I'll send you close-ups. The skull, all of a sudden, these little kind of metallic-looking bubbles started to form, and they're tiny, but they start to. I'm like, whoa, what is that? And I took tweezers, pop. It popped, no residue. Then another one started. I'm like, what? Pop. And these kept happening. And I'm like, I got to get a sample. And I was trying to get a sample. No luck. And so I got to get some pictures because nobody's going to believe me. So I got 2 or 3 photos of this. So this is when it did start to decompose off the ranch. And yeah, I got photos of it zoomed in. And it's like just these weird little metallic bubbles. And when they pop, no residue. The other weird one, and this one's more recent. I think this is last year. We filmed about this, but I don't think it's made it on the show. So I came in, and the producer came out, and we're saying hi, and we looked down, and like, there's these 2 dead quail, just that had fallen out of the sky, just laying there in the parking lot. And both of them, it was a male and a female, both of them had their upper mandible bashed in. So Let me show you a bird beak. No, this is a condor. So this is big, but okay. So a bird beak opens and closes, right? The beak itself is connected to the skull. It's keratin that grows over, but the skull it's attached. It's keratin attached to bone. Okay. Well, both of these quail, this upper part was bashed in, but the lower part was still there. So it's like, here's the beak. Both of them were like, "Nyeh." Male and female, both. Lower mandible still sticking out, upper mandible bashed in. They were both laying there, floppy flop, just fine. And we're like, well, this is weird. I want to find dead stuff. I show up at the ranch, blam. Here you go, right where you pull up, dead stuff. We left them there all week. They were right next to a fire ant hill. I got videos of this even because we're laughing about it. The ants wouldn't touch it. And they didn't dry out. This is like in July, I think, super hot. They didn't, rigor mortis never set in. They never dried out. They stayed floppy. And I did finally see one ant crawled up to the eye and went there and then ran away really quick. They never touched it other than that. So I just put them in the freezer. At the end of the week, I'm like, I got to go. Let's take a look at these guys later. Just weird.
So the only decomposition you, I guess, saw was with the smaller animals. They didn't decompose when they're dead on the ranch. Only when you take them off the ranch do they start to decompose.
Yeah. Other than the wolf thing that was in the water.
Right.
Yeah. Little stuff doesn't decompose. Antelope, ground squirrels, turkeys, coyotes, raccoons, skunks, Uinta ground squirrels, which are the ones we call pot guts around here, California ground squirrels, prairie dogs, black-tailed jackrabbit, cottontail rabbit, all of them just sitting there.
So you found all of those. Everything you listed, you find dead on the ranch, and it doesn't decompose on the ranch.
Yeah, magpies, ravens, red-tailed hawk, great horned owl. One Swainson, first year Swainson's hawk, and they floppy. They stay floppy. They never stink. Nothing ever gets them.
And you think science would be like, this is one of the biggest stories ever. Like, let's convene on this spot and get you and walk us through it all, but they don't, huh?
Yeah, because it's kind of a taboo subject. And honestly, if you had a UFO land on the ranch and aliens got out and said, hi, no laws of physics are broken, that's profound, but it's not insane. But to say, hey, here's an animal, it's dead, it doesn't decompose, the internal bacteria isn't eating the stomach lining, external bacteria is repelled, external macro scavengers are ignoring it, that is impossible. What is doing that? It's not impossible to have a UFO land and aliens get out. It's not impossible that there could be a Bigfoot running around out there. That's not impossible. It might be implausible, might be strange, but there's no rules to say it can't be. There are rules that say this stuff can't happen, which means we don't know what the real rules are. We have mislabeled what the rules of the universe are. That's what I want to know. What are the actual playbook rules?
It's funny because it was Pete Kelsey when I was talking to him, and again, he entered the ranch with eyes rolling, thinking this is all going to be bullshit. And every season, he's now to the point where he was like, it was total like astonishment, then serious inquiry and curiosity. And now he's like, I'm almost pissed because I want to know and I can't stop until I know. Like, he's like, I'm going to do this till the day I die. That's a big change for a skeptic, a man of science to walk into the ranch. And now 6 years later, that's where he's at. Also, there was something I wanted to ask you. Didn't you have something optically you saw, like a bird fly and it got warped? Tell us about that story.
Yep. This is one of the shameful things about good storytelling is sometimes you will put things in a different order than they happened or if it better tells the story, right? In anything, in a book, and I used to do in my journal. I would tell things out of the order they happened because it's a more concise way to do it. And of course, in these docudrama series, sometimes they'll be like, oh, this is a really good thing that happened, but we don't have time to fit it in. Oh, let's put it in next season and just make it seem like it happened this season. So the story I'm going to tell happened. They filmed it. They didn't put it in, and we're going to put it in the next year. But several people were no longer on the ranch anymore, and they were in those shots. And so it was like, oh, well, now we can't do it. And I'm like, Brandon, get this information out. And so we've sat on it. They're like, well, maybe they're going to put it in somehow. Maybe. And finally, last September, I'm like, please. No, it was on the Skinwalker Ranch Insiders. I'm like, Brandon, can I have your permission to do this? And he said, you know what? Yes, let's do this. Let's get this out. And I'm like, thank you. It was such a relief. So here's what happened. Bioindicators. It's a kind of a dangerous thing. And some people say, you shouldn't bring animals on that. What if they got hurt? We are animals. We get hurt. Everything on there. There's animals on the ranch getting hurt. So you can question how you go about it, right? So I brought on some Falcons. My buddy and I brought on a couple Peregrine Falcons, and we're like, let's just fly them around. We're not going to do anything crazy. We're just going to fly them. And we had radio transmitters on them and Marshall 3D GPS transmitters. Now, it's important to note, our government, our military, uses these transmitters on their drones to test them. So if you have an EMP that knocks out a drone falls out of the sky, these transmitters keep working. That's kind of their hallmark. So we went over the triangle, and Eric and I went up on the hill, and my buddy was down below. We flew the bird through the triangle. Now, the 3D GPS said Eric and I were bouncing up in the air, going hundreds of feet in the air. We're like, no, we're not. And bird flies through. When the bird went through, then the radio transmitter flared up, like did a big old radio flare as the bird flew through the triangle. And then on the ground, my buddy was picking the bird up. And again, the transmitter was saying it was like Spock in fast motion, like he wasn't. He was just picking up the bird, putting the jesses on. We did the experiment again. The exact same thing happened. We filmed it. We documented it. We're like, well, let's go to the East Field. So we all got in. We all drove to the East Field. Open space. This is cool. Get the Falcon flying up. It's doing good. Doing great. It's going about 800 feet up. And the GPS, beep, you got a 3D, picture Google Earth with a 3D blip going through real time. So we're watching this, and we're like, okay, let's bring her down. So we call her down, and she starts to come down towards the ground. And right as she gets, the lure's out there, I land on the lure, I get a big meal. And all of a sudden she freaks out, and she flutters and goes around, comes back around, and she keeps freaking out. Something near the ground was repulsing her from landing. And so finally she got so spooked, she starts going up, skying out, and she's up, 700 feet, about 800 feet. All of a sudden the GPS starts to miss blips. It's like blip, 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 nothing, blip, 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 nothing, blip, nothing, blip. And just a little over 1,000 feet, I think probably like 1,100 feet, we're all film crew's filming, we're filming with our phones, and all of a sudden we're like, where'd she go? I look down on the GPS and I'm like, what? My phone died. Eric was filming with my phone, and my phone stops filming. And so we go, and we're like, where'd the bird go? And this one was my buddy's Falcon. So he started freaking out. He's like, oh, my bird's gone. I shouldn't have come on the ranch. And then all of a sudden the radio transmitter starts working again. And the bird is now over the triangle, and we can see her. We're like, oh, she instantly appeared over the triangle. Let's start heading over there. Then the GPS starts picking up again, and it is mirroring the motion of the bird, but in the wrong place, about a quarter of a mile off. And when we get back and we look at the 3D GPS route, it shows that the bird went through the mesa, which is impossible. And I've brought this up. They haven't really addressed this, but I brought this up since. I'm like, in later seasons, there's a time at night where you saw a white light go into the mesa, and a time from Brandon's helicopter where you see around sunset a white orb come out of the mesa. Those are the same spots that the bird went through, according to the 3D GPS. And I think that's pretty big. The bird is fine, happy. It's flown for many seasons since. Had no ill effects, but the evidence suggests that the bird went through the mesa, which should be impossible.
Damn.
Big whopping story.
Yeah. No, that's, it's hard to put together how to respond to the collection of phenomena that you've experienced, and then you're the one experiencing it. Well, let's do this, because I wanted to ask you a couple things before we wrapped. And I asked this kind of everybody in the ranch, and from your time in 2000, because you were there earlier than a lot of before the show. Yeah. So in your time from 2016 to 2025, how has your perception or understanding or lack of understanding of the phenomena, how has that evolved and changed?
I think I went in with a very open mind. I'm like, just teach me whatever you have to teach me. I want to understand. I want to know what the rules are. And so how my perspective has changed, I think this is doctrine according to Ben. It seems like during the Bigelow era, it seems like there was friction. We don't know all that happened during that era. Not a lot got documented that has been shared. But it seems that same friction was there when the ranch was repurchased. But it seems like now the phenomenon has taken on a trickster element, kind of like Captain Jack Sparrow, coyote in Native American mythology. Like, hey, I'm going to teach you. I might jab a little once in a while, and I'm going to stay one step ahead of you. I'm having fun with you, but I'm also teaching you. You're keeping at this. Okay, you're paying attention. All right, I'm going to show you things. Let's see if you idiots can figure it out. I don't like the fact that it seems to have a geographic boundary. The whole Uinta Basin is nuts. You go there, you can feel it, and stuff happens, but it's almost like it all falls down, and the ranch is the epicenter of it. Maybe it's emanating from, but it operates as if it's aware, and I can't put it any other way. And I was a skeptic about that, and now I'm a believer that either the phenomenon on the ranch is either self-aware, or it behaves in a way that can only be interpreted as being self-aware, only be described as being self-aware. And I think it is trying to show us something. I really do. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe we can't even understand what it's trying to show us, but I think it is trying to show us something.
Okay. Cool. And a last actual question for you is, what do you think the phenomena is?
I think whatever we think that it is, we're going to be wrong. I think it is abstract, and I think whatever it is, we're grasping at straws. Like I said earlier, how the religious folk are starting to use scientific terms, the scientific folk are using religious terms, and we're seeing that with the UAP phenomenon in general. We're seeing religious congressmen using scientific, and vice versa. So I think it's abstract. We know it has to do with time. We've verified in many different ways. We don't know what a portal is, but whatever it is, we've verified it in many different ways. There seems to be portals happening there. We've definitely seen that, when Travis says poke in the hornet's nest, when they do, that one frequency starts to respond immediately. Like every time, here's this frequency. And so there's something to it. And I think all of our ideas are wrong. So we're trying to observe, we're trying to understand, we're trying to find the rules are. And the only rules that I know of for sure is that it seems small animals aren't subjected to the decompositional rules of taphonomy. Big animals are, unless they're in the water. That's about the only thing that I'm fairly conclusive on. But I don't know why. I don't know what would do that.
Right. And again, for me, what I find the most interesting is, as a biologist, having a presentation, the phenomena presents things to you, anomalous biological situations that you have to deal with. The archaeologist, anomalous archaeological finds that he has to deal with. The tech guys, the GPS, the craft.
Now let's give that a caveat.
Yep.
To anybody listening to the naysayers, okay, I understand you are going to see what your field is. That's the things you're going to notice, right? Pete Kelsey isn't going to notice a bird behaving strangely, right? However, I agree with you. It actually does. If you back up and hear all the stories, all the experiences, and take all the data together, it does very much seem that this phenomenon will manifest sometimes very directly, sometimes almost instantly to what your field is. Oh, in this area, I'm going to show you something in this area. In this area, boom, that's what I'm going to give you. I don't think it's just we're seeing what we're trained to see. I don't think that's the case. That is a fair argument for a naysayer to make. I am saying I have factored that in with my position. And I think that it really does seem to show you based off of your field, your area of understanding.
Well, to a degree, right? Like it's almost like a primary. It gets your attention. It seemed like it's gotten all the specialists' attention by showing them something that's related to their field. However, you're seeing what we're kind of defining as a portal in front of you. Yeah. You're seeing beings and this light, and you're getting your covers pulled down like night one, right? So that has nothing to do with biology, but everything to do with cementing the fact that there's something really, really anomalous going on here.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that first night, I really do think it was just trying to mess with me, test me. It's like, oh, fresh meat here. Let's mess with this guy. And then it's like, no, I'm not going to go running off. I want to understand. Okay. He wants to understand. All right. Okay. Maybe we can show him some stuff.
Well, and maybe that's why it's continued to do that. For me, I would have been like laying next to Eric. Hold me.
Yeah. Which would be the wiser thing.
So to wrap, I want to give you a chance to kind of you're more than just a pretty face on Skinwalker Ranch. You've got some of your own channels. You've got some of your own website. Go ahead and give yourself a shout out on what people can where they can find you.
So the best thing. So I'm on Facebook. I post a lot of motivational stuff and do that. But you can just look me up, Ben Woodruff. But I've got some YouTube channels. I've got Ben Woodruff Falconry, which teaches wildlife stuff, but I do all kinds of other stuff on there too. So Ben Woodruff Falconry and Desert Lore is another one that's mostly teaching like archaeology and history and Mesoamerican connections with the Southwest. Really interesting stuff. A lot of forbidden archaeology that archaeologists in North America don't talk about because they're worried about their reputation. I'm like, I don't care. I've worked in all these fields, so I'm just going to share what seems to be. And then at the Hutchings Museum, we have a YouTube channel. It's Hutchings Museum. Covers everything, dinosaurs and experimental archaeology and fossils and minerals and you name it. Got Native American history, pioneer history, how to make candles, a little bit of everything.
Nice. So with that, I also want to do, I want to let people know, we've got Ben on today, and we've talked a lot about the ologist, right? The biologist, the archaeologist, the technologist. So coming up in a few weeks, we're going to have an ologist Skinwalker Ranch roundtable, of which Ben will be a part of and some of the other people I mentioned. So looking forward to that. Make sure you tune into that. And Ben, between now and then, I know we'll be in touch. And I really appreciate your time today, and we will see you soon.
That's great. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast.
Talk soon.
All right. You take care.